So in the last video, we looked at enlarging something when it has a positive scale factor and the center was the origin. So it was that very special point, 0, 0. Now we're going to look at enlargements with a positive scale factor where the center is not the origin. Okay, so this is something we haven't seen before. So once again, we follow the same procedure though. It just, we're not working with our center at 0, 0. But nothing else has changed. For some reason, it can affect people differently. So we have our center point, 3, 4. So that's 3 in our x, right? 4 in our y. So mark our center with an x. Now we want to count the number of squares vertically and horizontally between the center and each vertex. So I'm going 1 over, and this is 3, right? So we're scale factor of 2. So 1 times 2 is simply going to be 2. And then we have our 3 times 2, which is 6. Okay, so that's our first point. And we're going to start using that little shortcut method I showed you in the last video more and more, where we just end up doing it from one point, and we will use our lines to check. So I did not draw my lines yet, because I want to save them to the end to start showing to you, okay, do the work and then check after. So this 1 over and 3 is going to become 2 and 6 from the center. So we'll do this just in a different shade of blue, just so you can see the difference. So here we're going to go 3, well that'll be 0.4, 5, 6 down, right? And we are going then 2 over. So 2 over, our new point will be here for the start of the bottom right of our triangle. So I'm just going to give you a little arrow and just say, kind of show you that that's our new corner, right? So here, now we can look at the actual size of our triangle. So it's 1 and 1. Well, we know that it's a scale factor of 2. So we're doing 1 times 2 is 2. So we can, that's 1 point, we can go 2 over from here, and then 2 up, and then simply connect our lines together. Last thing I want to do now is what we were doing in step 1 before, but I wanted to save it for a check, like I said. So here, grab your straight edge. I can do this as a dotted line. You may not. You don't have the technology to do that. So here, just going to connect our vertices, see if they go through our center point. And I just have to move that one little line, but notice you can tell already that they indeed do line up. They're on the correct side of the center, and it's the proper size. So we have completed this. We're doing these a little bit different every time, so I can show you all the different shortcuts and different ways you can think about these problems. So let's move on to the next example. So here we're enlarging a shape with a scale factor of 3 using -3, 2 as the center. So first thing we do, always indicate the center. So that's -3 in the x, 2 in the y. So our center is actually pretty close to our shape. So here, let's pick a few, I'm going to pick a few vertices this time that I want to work with, just because it's a little bit different of a shape, and this can help us. So here, I'm going to pick these ones, and we'll count. So here it is half 1 down, half of 1 over. So that little part in blue is a half times by 3, so we get 1.5. The next one I'm going to do, so I'm just going to label this 0.5, just in little numbers there. The next one I'm going to do, I'm going to follow I'm going to go to the right now. So we're 1 and 1.5 over. So 1.5 over, and we're 0.5 down still. So I'm just going to do 1.5 times by 3. So we have 1 times 3 is 3, and then we add that 1.5, so we have 4.5. And lastly, my bottom left corner that I indicated, so we're going 1 down, 2 down, so 2.5 down, and 0.5 across. So the only one I have to now do a calculation for is 2.5, so we'll do that 2.5 times 3. So we get 3 times 2 is 6, and then 6 plus that 1.5 is 7.5. So I'm going to start working with these. So well, let's do that bottom left corner first, the one we just did, the 7.5. So we know it's a half to the left, which is going to become 1.5 because we did that first calculation. So we do, from here we go over 1.5, and then we're going down 7.5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it just lies outside of our axes because I trimmed it off a little bit too much there. So now we have our 1 point. I'm actually just going to indicate with an X because I made dots along the way. From here, well, our next point, and even though we didn't work with it, we're going to look a little bit to the right. So on our original shape, I indicated this in red. So that's 1 over, well, 1 times 3 is going to become 3. So we're going 1, 2, 3. And this is why I didn't actually calculate that point because I knew it'd be a nice, easy one to look at after. I'm kind of showing you where you can just cut out some of your mathematical steps and use more of just a logical, well, if I know my shape was this and I'm timesing it by 2 or 3, well, it has to be 3 times as big. So going up from our point on the left, I'm just going to go up, and how much am I supposed to go up? Well, I'm supposed to go up 7.5, but that was back to our center. So we want to take off 1.5, so we're just going 6 up, or we can go 1.5 away from our x, or from our center, I mean. So let's just do that because it's easier. So 1.5, our next point should lie right there in red. Now, from our center, we said it was over 1.5 to our right point, but instead of 1.5 now, it's going to become 4.5, and it'll become 1.5 down just like the other one. So over 1, 2, 3, 4.5, and 1.5 down. So we have this point as well. And this last point. So you could do it for this point as well and see. What I'm going to opt for is drawing our checking lines because, like I said, they can be a massive help to just check stuff anyways. My mistake. So by doing our little check lines now, they can help make our kind of check a little bit easier later. So notice how I don't really have one standard way I go through these now after learning the basics, because you can pick and choose how you go about math sometimes. So depending on the question, I change what I want to do based on what might suit the question better, what might suit my own methods better, what might suit me just at the time. And I know all of my points aren't exactly perfect right now, but I will give them a little fix afterwards. Try and move them around. You of course can put a ruler down on your page, which will make it a lot easier when you're doing these for yourself. Okay, So we've got most of our lines in. Now I kind of want to use our line right here as a little bit of a check. So we know if we look at this point here, I've indicated in purple, we know that it's straight up from there. So we can guess that it is kind of around there, right? But our lines only get us so close. Well, we know how many units is it up by? It's up by 1 unit. So that 1 unit's going to become 2. So that brings us to here and brings us up another 1 would bring us up to here, right? So like I said, those lines can get us close, but you still want to go back and check. At this point, I want to connect all my lines. So I wanted to draw those lines, especially on harder, more complex shapes. They can help make sense. They can also confuse you as you look at our page and think, wow, this is kind of a little bit hard to follow. So if they confuse you a lot, don't use them. But if they help you, I would say keep on using them and checking work when you can. So here are 2 questions for you to give a go now. So as usual, pause the video. When you need, press play, and then we'll go through the answers. All right, welcome back. So we're going to go through both of these examples, or both of these practice problems. So our center at 5 and -4 in our first one. So 5 and -4 is down here. And on our other one, it's -4.5. So -4.5 and 5, which is up here. So I'm going to grab myself a little bit smaller of a pen right now so I can indicate. So here, I want to count from here over to this corner. So this is 1 and this is 2. So we know that is going to become 1 times 2, which is 2, and we have 2 times 2, which is 4. So that means from my center, I'm going to go over 4 and then up 2. So that is now our bottom right corner. I only wanted to get that point. I'm going to look at down here, which is 2, and this side, which is 2. Up here is 1, over here is 1, that's 1, and that's 1. So I'm going to use all these measurements here in a second. I'm just going to draw lines starting at this corner now. So here, I know from here it's supposed to be 2, so I'm going over 4 as per calculation. Instead of going 1 up, we're going 2 up. Instead of going 1 over, we're going 2 over. Instead of going 1 up, we're going 2 up. Instead of going 1 over, we're going 2 over. And instead of going 2 down, we're going 4 down, which indeed connects us to our original point. Okay, so we can draw in those lines to double check. Some of you may start to be able to kind of visualize them, where they're actually going to go, which is great. And to check them too, you don't always have to draw all of them. If you want to, you can. If you're trying to save time, obviously don't draw them. So keep in mind, when you do this for yourself, they will line up a lot better on real graph paper. So I'm just going to jump over to the next example right now. And we're going to look at here. So let's pick a couple points that we want to work with. So I always like picking the closest point because it's smaller calculation. So we're 0.5, right? 0.5 over, and then we're 1 down. So here we're going to go 1 times 3, 0.5 times 3. We just did that with our example, so we know that that is going to be 1.5, and this will be 3. So here we're going to start at the center and go 1.5 over, so 1 and 0.5. So this will be this new green corner, and then we have to go still 3 down, right? So we're going 1, 2, 3. this is actually where this corner will move to. Now, instead of going through all the effort again, I am just going to start labeling our shape like we did when we were in a grid. So one there, two there, one there, and then we'll do a 0.5 there. 0.5 is up, and 1 is over. So we've done actually most of these calculations. The only one we have to do is 2 times 3. So we have our 2 times 3, which is 6. So for you, you're going to grab your straight edge now, and we're going to start this green dot. So instead of going 2 over, we are going to go over 6. So if we're at -3 and we go over 6, we should end up at +3. Then instead of 1 down, we're going 3 down. Then instead of 1 across, we're going 3 across. Oh, sorry. So 1 across, we're going 3 across. Then instead of 0.5 up, we're going 1.5. So there's our 1, our 0.5. And then we're going to go right to the end to where our other dots will line up. So we've now enlarged that as well with a different center. So see you in the next video where we continue on with our enlargements.